Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cloud on Air. My name is Jimmy Sopko, and I'm an account executive at Google Cloud. You're watching our Google Cloud customer interview series featuring startup customer Blameless. We're going to discuss how they've extended their runway using Google Cloud and Google Kubernetes Engine, and how they cultivate a site reliability culture in a changing world. You can ask questions anytime by submitting them in the box below the screen. With that, let's get started. Joining us today is Usher Riski, CEO of Blameless. Usher, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jimmy. Excited to be on the show.
Yeah, thanks. We're super pumped. So I want to start off with a question, just to understand a little bit about yourself, your background, and what Blameless does as a business.
Yeah, happy to share, Jimmy, some of my background. So I'll go back just a little bit than what would be considered normal. I'm an immigrant. I grew up in the Middle East, moved to the United States in about 2006, 2007 timeframe for my undergrad degree in electrical engineering from Texas A&M. And, after graduating, my first job out of college was working as a sysadmin at Fidelity Investments in financial services. And quite frankly, that wasn't really the career path that I wanted to go down, but it was really what was available to someone that's an immigrant trying to get a job in a post recession economy that's just trying to recover. And I really wanted to be in do more things in these semiconductor space, because I felt that was real engineering, hardware engineering, and all the software stuff was just too fluffy for me. But that's kind of the opportunity that was created, and and the rest is really history. Worked in sort of traditional enterprise IT as a sysadmin for a couple of years. Worked out of a data center. Saw a lot of. I was very fortunate to see kind of a mix between sort of the legacy practices and some of the new DevOps practices coming in. And then the next sort of two roles for me was working at fast-growing companies like Box and MuleSoft, and seeing them through some major financing milestones like IPOs, and it kind of saw how the sausage gets made from an infrastructure standpoint, and was in a SRE role and a platform role in both those companies. And through those experiences, where sort of met my co-founder Leon, and we sort of decided to start a company because of these macro level trends that we saw around with Blameless.
Yeah, that's awesome. I always find it fascinating on how founders, use their different experiences to come up with the concept and eventually the business plan and the actual business. But one thing that's always really sparked my interest with Blameless is the name. So where did that company name originate?
Yeah, that's a great question. Credit for the term, Blameless. It's been talked prior in some literature by folks like John Allspaw and others. But in one experience, I saw how having a culture of blamelessness really allows you to move quickly, and it's okay, create this culture of taking risks and making mistakes. And the most important aspect of making mistakes is always making sure that you're learning from them. I don't know if I got a chance to address this, but that's really what our mission is at Blameless, is to move teams to a culture of resilience. And SRE practices and principles are really core to that. It's been around for over a decade, and what we've done is we've created a platform that operationalizes a lot of those SRE principles and practices, right? And so, if a company starts to adopt these practices, they inherently, start operating as a blameless culture.
Thanks, Usher. With that in mind, how did that influence your cloud native strategy as you were starting Blameless and up through now?
It's all about looking at the macro, like what's happening in the world at a much more macro level, which is that, there's this desire, there's this industry, like worldwide desire to where software, this trend where software is eating the world, right? And industries are being disrupted, and that's creating this need to move fast and provide fast, reliable experiences. But the challenge is that underneath it all, modern applications have completely changed, and the way that they're built and architected and operated is constantly changing. and it's creating complex interdependencies between these different modules. Especially when you're running inside a hybrid environment. So, it really comes down to managing complexity, and the nature of a complex system is 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 that it's always in a continuous state of brownout, and it's all about your ability to respond quickly and fix issues quickly and prevent those issues from happening in the same place. And the thing that's happening is that user expectations are increasing exponentially around security, reliability, performance, availability, like stuff like that, right? But what's not changing underneath it all is the rate, your production resources, the let's say the people that you have available. You're not going to be able to hire 3,000 SREs tomorrow, or 5,000 SREs tomorrow, the way, let's say, a company like Google does, and they're very fortunate to be able to do that. But if you're just an upstart, you're just working with very, very limited resources. But the expectation level for that your users have is the same expectation that they have from a company like Google, which provides phenomenal uptime and availability, right? So how do you actually get there? And being cloud native is actually a very, very core part of that, right? Because you need to have infrastructure on which you run your applications. There needs to be a way in which you deploy those applications, test those applications, monitor them, and operate them, and roll things back when needed, and manage change, and do this at just an increasingly rapid pace. As an upstart, as a small company like Blameless, we don't have to worry about security, like basic security, infrastructure security requirements. We don't have to worry about basic compliance requirements. We could just sign a BAA with one of these infrastructure providers and get a lot of, like, 30-40% of the work required for HIPAA. For example, if we're trying to go after healthcare, already done for you, because the underlying, cloud companies already have a lot of that built in. Historically, what used to happen is you had specialized teams, it's very expensive to go and hire these specialized teams to go and manage infrastructure, manage sort of base, what I consider commodity things, which, that's money, and those are resources that can go towards the core of what your business is, that can be going towards the core of what these new product innovations, right? You don't need to go solve the same problems again and again. So I think cloud native is a must-have in today's day and age to be able to do anything at the speed and scale at which users are expecting today. You just can't exist without it.
Yeah, I'm biased, but I agree 100%. But no, I think it's you talked about something of, like, focusing on your core business, and there are, I think I was at two startups before I was at Google Cloud, and the hardest thing we had to do was say no, and that was probably the thing we spent the most time trying to do. And I'm very curious about some of the trade-offs that you had to make. Both, like, obviously there's a trade-off of offloading some of your infrastructure to a cloud provider versus, like, building your own. But even within the different layers of a stack, when using a cloud provider, like, I'm curious what types of trade-offs you were thinking through and making in the early days as you were scaling and are scaling.
It's all about trade-offs, like you said, all about trade-offs and all about saying no. But the best thing that you can do for your company is, quite frankly, to say no to certain things.
Right.
And it, on a very quick tangent, it is the thing that elevates your credibility when you have the ability, and it just shows focus and commitment to a real problem, and just that problem and not everything else. So I just want to double down on that, what you said. For Blameless specifically, when my co-founder and I kind of started early on, we were fortunate enough to raise some venture money. But it's limited money. It's there for a certain period of time, and every dollar counts. And it has to be, you have to think early. It takes energy, but you have to think about where it is, what is going to, where's my investment going to yield the highest ROI for me, right? And so for us specifically, in the earliest days of the company, and any startup goes through this, is getting product market fit quickly, like as quickly as possible, and that requires rapid experimentation. The caveat for us is that we're building a product that's very specifically focused on for mid-market and enterprise type companies, which means that there's a certain reliability, security element to it as well. So if you were building a consumer application, you can be a lot more relaxed about, decisions that you make around, poor quality, poor reliability, because those users are likely to come back. With the enterprises, you only get one shot, maybe two at most if you're really lucky, and you've really got to make those count. And so then it's a question of how do you move very, very quickly, but still build for this enterprise. So that was kind of the guiding principle for us. And so security, making our platform secure and meeting some base level compliance requirements was very, very important. Um, and what that means is that you're not moving as quickly. That you have limited engineering and product resources, which means they have to also allocate some portion of their time to building in some security features, building in some compliance features, so that we can get those certifications. Right. That means that's effort that's not going to the product. In terms of managing infrastructure, and we made an early decision to say, hey, we're going to try and operate, just be agnostic of the infrastructure, and really try to take advantage of the platform, the native platform capabilities that a lot of the cloud providers were providing. And so we made this decision to go with Google GKE. And again, so that kind of gave us this balance between trying to move quickly and standardizing the way in which we build and run our applications, but at the same time, there's this whole notion of running multi-tenants versus single tenant. And in the earliest day, we decided to say every single customer of ours would get a single tenant hosted instance of Blameless, which meant that they would get their own Kubernetes cluster, their own database instance and stuff like that, which is actually quite costly. But what it does is it reduces the friction they're involved in getting through their security and compliance approvals, and it actually creates some very clean separations. Of course, Kubernetes today provides a lot of these separations inherently inside the platform, so it's become moot, and now we're moving to taking advantage of becoming a multi-tenant platform. But in the earliest day, it was all about moving quickly, make those decisions, get across the finish line so we can unlock and just get to that product market fit as quickly as possible.
Yeah, totally. No, thanks for that. And I think we're doing this remotely. We know the world has changed in the past few months. 4 months ago, we would have been doing this in person in a studio. Can you talk to us a little bit about the challenges that you and Blameless have faced and how those challenges have impacted your strategy?
Quite frankly, what it did for us is that gave us a tremendous amount of focus, right? At the macro level, it created uncertainty, but the good news is it created uncertainty for everybody in the world, right? So, it's like just getting a blanket pass on going back and saying like, hey, this is the time that we're going to go and invest in this particular area of the business that we've been neglecting, or this particular area of the product, right? And so that's one aspect of it. Um, we were fortunate enough, again, growing very quickly, and that usually comes with an impact to the runway and the burn rate. And we had certain plans in place, and obviously we had to tweak those plans as an immediate reaction to COVID, to say, okay, like let's, steady the ship, make sure that we have enough runway to last about 2 years or so, 2 years or more, which is great. And then just go back and revisit a lot of the assumptions and strategy that we had put in place, right? Like, and this is all happening real time. The world is reacting and shifting literally day by day, week over week. The stock, as I'm sure you've kind of been seeing, the stock market has been going haywire. It's just really hard to see any kind of pattern emerging there. And but what that does is, like, for us, is like, let's hunker down, make sure that our foundations are very strong, and then just kind of like focus on the things that really matter, both on the product side, the go-to-market side. Really, the credit goes to my co-founder here, where we decided to shift a lot of our investments into digital strategy. And we were very much focused on events, for example, and had a very large events budget. We said, let's revisit that, shrink that down dramatically, and just get very, very creative around like our digital strategy, digital events, digital outreach, and stuff like that. On the product side, we said, great opportunity to focus on just even increasing quality even more, usability of the product, polish, and these kinds of things that most of the time just get put into a tech debt bucket, and we're like, we'll kind of touch on this when we get there, right? So just gave us, quite frankly, a lot of breathing room. And we're now in a good spot. I'm happy to say our demand has gone up for because of a lot of these macro reasons, because every other company out there is now forced to think about their digital strategy and moving their businesses to this digital world. And again, if you're trying to do that, they quickly realized that how important reliability, quality, security are to those things, and are there systems out there that can help us do that?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think, uh, yeah, everyone's in it globally, which makes this, I think, maybe a little bit different than other like big challenges that the world has seen. Um, but yeah, we also saw it took people a month, about to just orient themselves in this new world and figure out, collect a bunch of data, try to do some analysis and make some decisions. And um, I'm really glad to hear that there's focus and things are kind of turning around. And Usher, based on your experience, what advice would you have for other startups looking to solve some of the problems that you're solving for, with respect to the VCs getting more conservative around making sure that there's a viable business, and the SaaS economics look really good as they look to invest in companies.
Yeah, great question, Jimmy. The key is really in what you just said, which is SaaS economics,
Yeah.
right? And you really have to break that down into what like SaaS economics down into its constituent parts and really look at each one of those things very, very closely, right? And so I'll give you our example, right? Of course, COGS is an extremely important part of that. Our architecture, as I mentioned, was very much single tenant. That's not something that's tenable. It's expensive. So we went back and really prioritized this re-architecture effort that we've been planning for 2 or 3 quarters to actually say this is now our opportunity to go and move to multi-tenancy and really optimize our spend and maybe consolidate across, instead of running in multiple cloud providers, let's consolidate into one cloud provider, that, and really optimize for, take advantage of some of the startup programs that they may be offering. Let's go into a much more deeper partnership with them, and sort of take advantage of those relationships. um, the other thing is, you really have to go back and look at your headcount, your operating plan, and the headcount that you had allocated, and just make sure that you're questioning every single one of those. Just, the scenario. We did a lot of scenario planning on our side, worst case, best case, that kind of activity. And for each one of those, we went back and we looked at, what are must have essential. How much can we cut down to the? Do we want to cut down to the muscle, to the bone? Where do we want to draw the line? And so that's a very, and these are, actually, the number one thing outside of all of this is that you have to move quickly and you have to make decisions. No decision is probably the thing that's going to kill you, right? And not taking any kind of action is really the thing that's going to hurt the most. And so, we moved very, very, very quickly. We actually went back and and again, credit goes to my co-founder Leon here. Went back and sort of rejiggered our go-to-market strategy and our positioning to say, okay, in this post sort of COVID world where we're in a state where we have very limited resourcing, let's pretend that we're not going to raise funding for the next 2 years. How do we want to change our positioning? How do we still continue to drive top line of the business and amplify that, even amplify, let's set an even more aggressive goal, a 10x goal, with the resources that we have today, right? We also went and asked for every single vendor that we were working with, like asking them for help, because guess what, they're all sort of running into the same challenges themselves. They have bills to pay as well. So it's like, hey, how do we get more flexible amount with the payment plans that you can kind of put us on? Or are there the ways in which we can defer, or just change the payment structure in such a way that just really helps us get through a time where burn is extremely, extremely critical? And you know what, guess what, it's not something that's very specific to COVID. These are all strategies that you can apply at any point in time. It's all about being able to manage these things carefully and do that well.
Um, but taking care of employees is, I know, something that's really important to you and Blameless. And so I'd love to hear like what steps you and Blameless have taken internally to empower employees working remotely during this time.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics, Jimmy. Mostly because it's such a it hits so close to home when it comes to culture and blamelessness and like uncertainty and fear, and how do you sort of manage through that kind of environment, which again is not, it's amplified because of COVID, but as a company, we're going to face something like that at different points in our lives, in our through the lifespan of the company. And employee safety is like the number one thing to optimize for, and that's something that we moved very very quickly. And as soon as we started getting some signals from the state governments, we basically instituted an immediate work from home, 100% remote policy to say everybody gets to work from home. We're going to be as flexible as we can with equipment that we can give people to have them help them work remotely effectively. Um, but the good news for us is the reason why it was an easier transition than most is because from the beginning, we actually had a pretty flexible work from home policy. And it really stemmed from this principle that, um, you know, talent is just becoming more distributed. And if we want to hire the best people, like let's give them the flexibility to operate around what's important to them, family life and, uh, moving to a lower cost area where they can raise their families and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, we've got to optimize for getting the best talent, and obviously the macro level culture is changing. So that really helped a lot here. As immediately after that, because it was still relatively new to say that 100% of the company is going to work remotely, we had this intense focus on optimizing performance for everyone and making sure that we still had a way to collaborate.
Talking to your team and talking to you, and as we've been working together, something else that came up a few times was how you have adapted to actually use Blameless to help you guys accelerate and adapt in this change. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is again, it's so you're asking such great questions, Jimmy. It's so hard to. I keep saying this is one of my favorite. There's like all of these are near and dear to my heart. You know, uh, we're a product for engineering teams built by engineering teams, and one of the first principles is that we must dog food our own product and treat ourselves. And so dog fooding isn't just about, oh yeah, we're gonna test better, right? It's about ingraining the product and the practices into our day-to-day lives, and that means that we have to treat ourselves as customer zero. We have to treat ourselves with the same level of importance and respect as we do other customers. I know it's hard to do because it's us, we're we're a team. Like we don't need to. No, we really have to level ourselves up to the same level as a customer. Sales teams start to do incident retrospectives and postmortems, or start to, if there's a closed loss opportunity, hey, let's treat that as an incident. Or hey, we're about to churn a customer, let's treat that as an incident. Or hey, we have a high risk customer, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of those practices and principles and structure that you get that just makes us operate more effectively and more efficiently with the limited set of resources that we have. So it's just been pretty amazing to see that that those systems start to be applied at other parts of the business, other parts of the company, which is, it just extends beyond it being a product and engineering practice, right? And my personal principle is that no customer should ever come to us with a problem that we're just unaware of. Like we should never be caught by surprise. And so again, dog fooding is really a key part of that, making sure that at a minimum, if a customer is ever raising an issue with us, we're already aware of the problem. We're like, yeah, we know it. Here's our plan to address that, and that sort of gives them a sense of confidence that, hey, this team really has its stuff together.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. What success stories have emerged from this experience? I mean, whether it be with your teams or your customers or even your own personal journey over the past few months.
Yeah, that's a good question, Jimmy. The success stories. The biggest success story is that we've been, for an earlier stage company like us, a lot of the largest Fortune, I would say Fortune 100 companies are looking at us laser focused and saying, this company knows, or has a well formulated opinion, has a position of leadership that they're establishing, really focusing on that. So let's actually bring them in and partner with them. And they don't see us as a simple tool that they're just going to come and plug in. What they're saying, hey, help us change. This is the biggest thing in my opinion. Please come and help us change the culture. Like a lot of the CTOs that I talk to in these Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, they're saying like, hey, we have this desire. Like we know that just throwing tools at the problem is not going to solve it, but please come and help us change the culture. and we don't really know how we're going to do it. We think, culture is a fluffy thing, but we understand the importance of it. So come and show us the path. Right? I think that's been the biggest success story for us, for Blameless as a whole. The second thing is that we've the approach that we take when sort of launching these new ideas and new products is a very much, I would call it a industry collaboration effort, right? Like we don't just sort of sit in a corner somewhere and just come up with ideas and then go and sort of build a product around it and launch it. We're very, very active in the SRE community, working with the thought leaders and just understanding the problems that they're encountering and facing, and then going back to them with solutions, right? So it's a multi-pronged, multi-phased approach where we meet with many, many different peoples. And I think that's, again, really helped us establish that credibility, because it makes people and teams feel like they're really being listened to, really being heard. And I think that's a really important strategy generally for startups. But I think that's a big success story that's emerged for us as well.
What would you recommend other startups do to get to that like point of focus? Like you seem to have a very, very narrow market now, and not in a bad way, like a very focused target, and like are quickly figuring out the value, the added value, or even more value that you can bring to these customers. So how would they go about getting that?
Going back to what we started the conversation with, which is most important thing is saying no, knowing when to say no, and number two, knowing that it's okay to say no. So right, that's one. The other thing that's been extremely helpful for us is, I think the landscape has changed quite a bit, where partnerships weren't given a lot of importance back in the day. Like it was always considered a distraction, and um, it's like, okay, if we're partnering with mid-sized companies or similar stage startups or large companies, really, what's the incentive for them? What's the incentive for us? And just like it takes a lot of energy to align those things. And I would say, or like let's say maybe 5+ years ago, it was just something you don't even do until you reach a certain like stage. Now, again, what's happening is the world is shifting. Digital services are becoming increasingly important, and it's all about getting your digital services into the hands of users and customers as quickly, safely, securely, reliably as possible, right? And so, quite frankly, it is a huge amount of uh, cost there's a huge amount of cost that goes into doing that from scratch, right? Well, guess what? You've got partners like Google or Microsoft or whoever it is, like your channel partners, your collaboration, your API partners, your third party, teams that you're already integrating with, or products that you're already integrating with. Start leveraging those relationships, and I guarantee. I mean, this is what we've seen across every single person we've talked to. They all want to. There's a desire to. It's not just about top line revenue anymore, right? Of course, I think that's just a side benefit that happens, but it is about thought leadership and being seen as like a thing that's modern and always evolving and always changing. And the only way you do that is through like an ecosystem strategy. So one advice I would have is focus on the ecosystem strategy early on. It's relatively cheap enough now, because a lot of the teams that you're going to be partnering with already have defined processes, teams, resources behind them, and are incentivized to make those partnerships happen. So I think that's been a big lesson learned, and some advice that I would really give folks is like go to your cloud provider. We're spending a lot of money on our cloud provider. Let's actually explore a partnership. Oh, and guess what? There's like 5 programs that we have, that Google provides, that we're sort of starting to take advantage of. Or hey, we have this deep integration with Slack, or deep integration with AppDynamics or New Relic. We're sending a lot of traffic your way. Let's actually turn that into some kind of a thing that's mutually beneficial. And I guarantee that there's going to be somebody on this other side who's either thinking about it or is definitely willing to engage and respond.
Yeah, because I mean, as a platform, you guys enable their solutions, right? And
Exactly.
and you're like the foundation to it. So it makes a ton of sense. And like something I've come across, and I like every startup has to hire a sales team, and that's just more people calling on these enterprises. And so the more that you can try to have other people help you get to that starting line, I think is it's something that we are seeing at Google Cloud. Like we are investing heavily in our partner ecosystem, And Blameless is part of that partner ecosystem. We are working on deals together with some of those big Fortune 100 you talked about. So yeah, very exciting, very very exciting. What can your customers get excited about and expect from Blameless in the near future?
Yeah, stuff that I'm really excited about, and I think our customers can get very excited about. Of course, I think we have a phenomenal sort of engine around creating very exciting, and very new and unique content. And the reason I bring that up is because a lot of folks that are thinking about SRE, thinking about like really they start the first step is like I just want to learn. I want to learn it. It's a new skill. I want to learn some new skills. So that's been a big area of focus for us through content. The other thing is that we've been fortunate enough to be connected and bringing together some of the most forward-thinking technical leaders in the space. We recently did an interview with Melody Hildebrandt. She's the executive vice president of security and engineering at Fox, and it's just amazing to be able to tap into those experiences from people and put that on a platform that's accessible to everybody else out there. So I think from that perspective, it's going to be extremely exciting. We're going to be, in terms of teams that are embarking on their journey around or have already hit a certain maturity point within SRE journey. We're excited to partner with them and show them, number one, showcase what they've done that's amazing to others, but more importantly, if there are gaps, like we're there to help them. So I think that's something that teams can look forward to. On the product side, we've got some really exciting stuff. A lot of cool integrations. Again, ecosystem, platform kind of a platform play is very really critical to us in our success, and so you're going to see a large amount of deep integrations coming into our platform, supporting both mid-market and enterprise. The thing that we've done early on as a part of our strategy is to never sort of say, oh, we're just going to focus on this sliver of enterprise or just focus on this sliver of SMB. It's always been build a platform that sort of plays well with others. There's always a better together story, and people can just plug in and take advantage of that. So a lot of really cool integrations coming across the entire DevOps stack. So observability, alerting and monitoring, change management and orchestration and stuff like that. Capacity man. A lot of like our product is a very workflow automation product through collaboration systems like Slack and Microsoft Teams. So you can actually start doing. There's new workflows that we're going to be launching in that space, and then of course, thinking the other thing that I think customers can be really excited about and look forward to is that we're beyond. It's not just about reliability. Reliability is not something that happens in isolation. It happens in conjunction with things like security, things like CI/CD and DevOps, right? And so we have a bunch of products that we're launching and a series of thought leadership pieces that we're doing that really bridges that builds that full end-to-end picture between when you write a single line of code all the way to testing it, deploying it, breaking it, and then learning from that breakage and sort of creating that feedback loop, and for Blameless to become that central nervous system that connects everything together and sort of helps orchestrates and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of exciting stuff. As I mentioned, we launched this new SLO product, getting a tremendous amount of interest there. And the one piece of advice that I would give to anybody who's listening is, if you're on a journey to start SRE, don't know where to begin, reach out to us. We'll start with SLOs. That's really the most basic baby step that you can take with the existing tooling that you have in place, without any kind of disruption happening to your culture, your teams, and how they work and operate and stuff like that. So, and it's a way that we can level everyone up.
Wow, sounds like your customers have a lot to look forward to. Usher, it's been an absolute pleasure spending some time with you today. I really appreciate you sharing your journey and bringing a bunch of insights to all the other Google Cloud customers out there.
Jimmy, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I really hope the teams out there that are listening have, there's a bunch of tidbits in there for them that they can learn from.
Yeah, I'm certain they are. And thank you again, everyone who tuned in. Please join us for our next Cloud on Air, and we'll see you then.